Hello and welcome to episode 9 of TE Present Teacher. And today we are going to be talking about something that is extremely new and people are trying to do this in a very nuanced way. Uh, Teacher professional development, but not just teacher professional development, continuous teacher professional development. How do we maintain continuing teacher professional development? How do we get teachers to buy in? How do we motivate teachers to actually put in the effort when these sessions are happening and even put in the effort to put the things that we have discussed during the sessions of the professional development and implement them in the classroom. And for that, again, we have Ritu today. Hi, Ritu.
Hi.
Hi. So we have been working with teachers, even as part of things education, we've been working with teachers for more than 3 years now. And there have been schools that we've been working for more than 2 years and, been there with them at different milestones. So I thought that, today would be a good day to talk about what works for teacher professional development in Indian schools, because I think there's a lot of information out there of, how to engage, how to observe classrooms, etc. Specifically, say in the UK and a little bit in the US, but actually going down to trying to get information in the public domain for Indian classrooms, for Indian schools, for Indian teachers, we find that information piece is missing. See, the first thing is to get teachers buy-in, right? When will teachers actually buy into a professional development course or training program or sessions?
So, and that's an important question because it's probably the first obstacle to any professional development or long-term professional development uh, intervention that anyone does with schools. Teachers are not bought into the program. And the answer to it is honestly very straightforward. It's not too nuanced. It's not about motivation. It's not about how the program is designed. I think, at least in our experiences, what we've seen is teacher buy-in begins when we as facilitators of those sessions show up continuously and show up uh, regularly so that teachers, see us often enough to start building familiarity over time, start building trust that these people are here to stay and they're not just one uh, experts who are coming in to lecture us.
Right. So it's more of an interpersonal connection that needs to be built. I mean, that would probably be the first step, right? I mean, expertise, whatever, research, blah, 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 that can come in later, is what I'm hearing from you. Is that true?
Yeah, and and I think we've seen it at a much higher level than one-on-one connections with teachers. That's not what we're talking about. That comes much later. What we're talking about is months and months of just showing up uh regularly on time for these sessions. No matter how much teachers are showing that they're resistant to these sessions or to spending their time. Uh, that's what we've seen has finally warmed them to us and then quickly changed into deeper relationships with them.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because I know from even my experience that just turning up, like you said, over and over again, you will probably not see the change in the sessions sometimes. And after your session has ended, it's the conversations that you have with the teachers. They will come up to you and say that, hey, I'm having this issue in the class. Is there a way that we can talk about this right now or next time? I think that is for me, that is the barrier it's broken. That okay, now they feel that comfort and they want to then talk about things that they are not able to figure out, and they are able to put themselves in that so-called vulnerable position where they're saying, hey, this is not working out for me. So yeah, I get that completely. It makes sense.
And along with confidence, it's also the fact that we're respecting teachers' time and their availability by showing up when we promised we would show up. I think that's something that is, again, it may be an overlooked factor, but it's very important that teachers feel that respect. Um, and I think I'd also like to add to that maybe one more thing apart from showing up, a completely different point, which is related to respect, is in those sessions respecting, showing respect for every teacher's experience. That's also something that's a very high level point which has worked really well for us. Not dismissing any teacher's concerns or opinions shows them that we're here to work with them, with their context, with their struggles, and not just giving them advice from the outside without really understanding or respecting their experiences. And I think one example that comes to mind is we've been working with preschool teachers, and these are teachers who are implementing our unboxed early learning curriculum. And we have a very structured way of doing the day with students, and we always start the curriculum always starts the day with circle time. So I remember spending about an hour with all of the teachers of pre-K, K1 and K2 on figuring out their circle time structure, because they felt that the structure that we had provided ignored some of the things that they wanted to do, uh, which they've been doing for years. So what we ended up doing was spending an hour taking their inputs and along with them coming up with a new structure of circle time. And I think that was it was very evident in that session that teachers were very happy with the fact that their structures and their approach over the last few years, that wasn't being ignored, it was being implemented, it was being considered in that curriculum. um, and I think I definitely saw after that teachers changing their demeanor and beginning to feel more open and more comfortable in whatever happened after that, all the sessions that happened after that.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a great point. I mean, and when you think about it a little bit, you feel that, huh, ye to karna hi hai. This is so obvious. But apparently it doesn't happen enough. So I think the first thing to do is get teacher buy-in, and one of the ways or few ways are to, actually look at what currency they are dealing in, and deal in that currency and not just deal in the currency that or you want to kind of shout down their throats, sort of a thing. So yeah, thanks. I think that's important. In the things that you have been saying, one thing that kind of comes up as a theme recurringly is you're talking about showing up frequently. You're showing up time and time again. So it is kind of implying that these teacher professional development sessions should not be episodic or just once in a year or maybe once in lifetime or whatever, but needs to be continuous. And is that also something that you would recommend?
Yeah. One is of course that buy-in happens only when you regularly show up, and teacher development is not something that can happen in just one or two sessions. It has to be a long-term collaboration with the school. Um, because there are so many different aspects of teaching, of learning, that teachers really need to understand and practice and get feedback on and get support with. That it definitely has to be continuous.
Hi, we have developed an amazing tool to help teachers plan their lessons, TEPS, or Things Education's pedagogical strategies. TEPS helps teachers by reducing the time that they spend on planning lessons. TEPS also helps you if you want to try a different pedagogical approach to teaching. So, if you want to know how to teach a topic in a project based or inquiry based or even constructivist learning approach, TEPS is for you. TEPS helps even seasoned teachers with fresh ideas on how to teach specific topics. So, scan the QR code on the screen or visit teps.school and join a community of empowered educators. Great teaching begins with TEPS.
So when we say that, okay, teacher professional development needs to be continuous, we then have to ensure that whether it's the government who's looking at government schools or the school leadership, they need to actually plan for this. And when I say plan for this, that means budget time, budget money, budget stuff, you know. I understand that the school will have to do this. I'm just going to take another example. I mean, not an example, but I'm going to just give you a scenario where, say, we don't do it in a continuous manner and we show up, once in 6 months. So basically, that is like, in the summer and then in the Diwali Dashera break. Um, does that work? I mean, has that worked in your experience?
And the simple answer is no, it doesn't really work, because what ends up happening is that one, teachers are already resistant to you showing up because you've not shown up. They know that everything that has happened in the 6 months between the first session and the second session, we're completely unaware of. So we don't know what they're going through, we don't know their struggles. So there's already a lack of trust and a lack of credibility there. And I think the other problem that happens is that because there is such a long gap, anything that we do in, say, the first session, if it's not implemented, if it's not observed, if teachers don't get feedback on that in their teaching, they forget about it. It doesn't become a part of their practice. And so when we go back 6 months later, we either start from there, or even if we move on to the next topic, the next concept, we see that teachers are really struggling because the base knowledge that was there is gone, it's forgotten. Um, so it's just everyone spinning their wheels. Teachers are unhappy. We don't feel that any progress has been made. So overall, sporadic sessions definitely don't work in our experience.
Right. Thanks. I think that is useful to know. On one hand, we say that we need teacher buy-in. And we've also said that, there has to be a little bit of top-down pressure from the management or the government authority for teachers to go through these trainings. So now let's assume that we are doing it in a continuous way and then we are showing up. In this scenario, are teachers then passive consumers of whatever is going on? Or do they actively involve themselves in saying that, hey, you know what, this is what we want, this is what we feel is missing? Or are they just saying, कि, हाँ ठीक है, कुछ तो we're getting some yarn here, let's just deal with it and go with it?
I think what we've seen so far is that because TPD is in such a nascent stage in India where teachers really don't know what the expectations are, what the outcome is. It's just a lecture usually that teachers attend and walk out of. As of now, there isn't really a culture in India where teachers feel that they have a say in what development they want, and that's at a higher level. Very often, teachers don't even feel that they are allowed to ask questions during those sessions if they have doubts, or if they are unsure about how to implement things. So it's in terms of whether they're passive consumers. Yes, it does seem like most teachers are currently passive consumers of this knowledge or these, um, both at a decision making level of what the topic needs to be, and during the session, do I really have a say, or do I really have the space to ask questions? But and I think both of us have seen that with the buy-in, with continuous showing up, with showing teachers respect, that at least within a group of teachers that we're working with, that starts slowly changing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really resonate with this point because, there and multiple things that you've said there make a lot of sense because you're right. Sometimes the leadership and us also kind of decide, okay, hey, yes, we need to do these things. We need to do project-based learning, and teachers need to move to a project-based learning curriculum, blah blah blah. And then after you keep showing up and you talk to the teachers, there'll be one of those times when, like I said, after the session, the teacher will come up, most of the times a little sheepishly, sadly, but that's what happens. And they'll say, hey, you know what, all of this is great, but I am struggling with finishing my syllabus. How can I manage my time better? That's a very, it's something that you are assuming that the school leadership knows about and has solved for. When they start talking about we need to do project-based learning in our classrooms. But those assumptions kind crack, and then you go back to the leadership and say that, hey, let's take a step back. Let's do more basic things with your teachers, because I think that's where we will really actually help, and efficiency will increase, student outcomes will increase, and we can actually show you differences there. So I get that completely. So, however, I mean, whenever I was thinking of these examples, etc., these are a mix of teachers for me. Okay, they're younger teachers who are saying that, hey, you know what, I don't even know very basic something. And then there have been experienced teachers who have said, okay, but how do I finish my curriculum? I don't have time. So, in your experience, what has it been like with more experienced teachers? How are they looking at teacher professional development? Because so far in India, till I'm going to say last 5 years, it's been how you go to that diet thing in your district. There's going to be one session. It's a mandatory check that you need to do, and you get your next pay raise or whatever. But now it's the teacher professional development is coming to you. There is no way of getting out of it, and you're not actually getting a raise because of some of these sessions. So how has it changed? I mean, have you seen a difference between more experienced teachers versus younger teachers?
I think with good reason, more experienced teachers are more skeptical and resistant to these teacher professional development sessions, because a lot of their experiences with these kind of sessions has been really not helpful. Like I said again, I think we're going back to the same thing. A lot of these sessions may not have taken into consideration their experiences, their knowledge, their struggles with students. And so over time, they've become skeptical of the usefulness of these sessions. So I think that's what we've seen, at least in the beginning. The more experienced teachers are more resistant, whereas newer teachers are a little more open to understanding and learning. But again, over time, uh, if we spend enough time with the teachers, if we keep showing up, if we keep delivering value and listening to their concerns and genuinely trying to help and support, the most experienced teachers sometimes end up becoming probably one of the most valuable voices in that session, because they have good hard hitting questions that they ask, and they have uh, like a wealth of experience that they can help with, and they can contribute uh, to even contribute to us as facilitators, and also contribute to other teachers. One more thing that is probably a little more nuanced, but we've seen that when more experienced teachers attend these sessions, what they'll see is that over the years they've learned what works with kids, what doesn't work with kids, how to plan, how to manage. So a lot of good practices they may be already doing in their classrooms intuitively, um, but they may not have words for what they're doing. They may not know what to call it, and they may be doing it in very disparate ways. So they don't have a structure to use. And these sessions then end up helping them in these ways, to give them words to use for what they're doing, and also helping them structure uh, their practices in a more research-backed way, which ends up being pretty useful.
Right. I think those are two very important points. I think getting the vocabulary for doing what you do, and just getting the I don't think there's a lack of confidence, but even just knowing that, okay, you know what, somebody else also is saying that this is what I'm doing intuitively makes sense. I mean, that's a human thing, and I think it's not just with teachers. And yeah, you're right about get the discussions being richer when there are experienced teachers, and especially experienced teachers who are switched on, where they're actually trying to sometimes to bring us down also. They're paying a lot of attention, and they're trying to ask us the right questions, like you said, the pertinent pointed questions. And for me, in my experience, it's been great to have such people, because it keeps me on my toes. And it definitely helps the group, when such a question is asked and the discussion goes to a slightly more nuanced level. Now, there are going to be teachers in the crowd who are not that experienced, but that nuanced discussion is going to help them. And I think that really helps. And it also keeps trainers honest. At the same time, I think they do also gain from a lot of these discussions. So I think both of us, it is kind of a mutualistic relationship there. So yeah, I agree with that. So once teachers have this experience and all of that, and we give them the vocabulary and I won't call it confidence, but the backing. I mean, how do we make sure that it works for them once they're back in the classroom after these sessions?
I think one of the sort of features that we've tried to incorporate into uh, our TPD is that we push teachers to stop and reflect on what has happened in the session and how it relates to what they've been doing so far, what they're comfortable with, not comfortable with, how they're going to implement it. We've sort of incorporated that in the way of keeping time aside at the end of our sessions and asking teachers to think about it, write about it, share it if they'd like to. Um, and that small practice, I think, is very helpful so that teachers are not just consuming information or participating, doing these hands-on activities that we very often do and just walking away and going back to their everyday practice. We're trying to build that bridge of saying, hey, no, just stop, think about what happened, think about how you will implement it, where you might struggle, what help you want from us further. That small act of reflection, I think, has been very useful, and it's something we've always actively tried to include.
Right. And I think along with that, it also helps when, there are tangible takeaways, in the sense that, see, one of the examples that we always use, even while we are talking about this outside, is that, hey, you get your lesson plan and we will change the lesson plan during the session. Um, Whether it's, going to inquiry, going to project-based learning, or just active learning for that matter. You get your lesson plan and we'll change that. So I think we have covered a lot of what we wanted to talk about. Teacher professional development is here to stay, and the way to make it more effective is one, and I think this is probably the most important thing, just show up and keep showing up and ensure that you are not sermonizing from a pulpit, but actually going down to the grassroots in the classroom, observing things in the classroom. And based on these observations and based on teacher experience, you are trying to, provide almost a scaffolding or support around the teacher and the teaching as we go ahead. And of course, there are, more nuanced points to this, but I think these two things, that be real in their experiences and expertise and just show up for them. I think those are two things that have stood by us in our experience so far. So thanks a lot, Ritu. I think this was a very informative session. And to everyone else, I hope you like this video. If you liked it, please like. Even if you didn't like it, subscribe, support us. We are trying to keep this free and we want your support for that. So tell your friends, tell your colleagues, and we will be back next time with another episode of Tea Present Teacher. See you for now.